the study of Noah. We were in Noah last week, we're in Noah again this week, we'll be with Noah again for a third week next week. Is we're going to see Jesus like jump off the page. And it is really, really incredible. So just dive in with me. Last week we started in Genesis chapter 5. Does anybody remember the literary device that's often used by Hebrew writers that we talked about? A chiasm. A chiasm is a literary device that's used to convey a message, right? And this literary device in Hebrew literature is basically you've got your bookends, and then as the story progresses, there's going to be a mirror on the opposite side. So the best way to describe it is a menorah, right? A menorah for Hanukkah, right? The outsides connect, then the insides, then there's the center of it, of the menorah, that's typically a little bit higher, right? Well, Hebrew literature, they use a similar structure. There's a lot of repetition, but the repetition isn't necessarily always directly after it. It comes later, and then you're coming into the center. So we started, and we're just going to point it out, we started entering this chiasm last week. We see A up on the board, right? It's the introduction of Noah's heritage and his lineage. Then B was all about the fall of creation. All of creation has become evil. Every intention in man's heart is evil. But what's so cool about this passage is God's initial emotion isn't anger. What was God's initial emotion? Grief. And hopefully, man, as we looked at last week's text, you started to become more and more convinced that, man, we're not like Noah, but we're like everybody else, desperately needing grace and mercy because our sin grieves God. I've been really, really grateful this week. I had 4 different conversations with men in this room this week that were incredibly courageous. Men that maybe had been hiding a little bit because of their sin and some of their choices. They had become so convicted of the text last week that they were like, man, I've been grieving God. I just got to talk to somebody about what's been going on. And the conversations, they were amazing. There's 4 different guys. You know who you are. I appreciate your courage and your faith. But yes, hopefully last week, right, seeing our sin before God, how it grieves God, and then the chiasm continued down from 9 to 10, which was the introduction of Noah's sons. And so, right, the chiasm is on the outside, working our way in. Think of like a bullseye or a magnifying glass. So we saw this repeat itself in reverse, right? In I think this is chapter 8, or this is the end of chapter 9, right? The children, now it's not all of humanity, it's Noah and his son's sin, right? And then it's the end of the lineage, right? If you're having a hard time following, that's okay. Go on YouTube, watch the video on YouTube. It'll make a whole lot more sense to you later. But that's kind of a brief recap. Just dive into the text with me. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 6, picking it up in verse 11. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. We're going to highlight this because it's going to be our 4th iteration of this chiasm. And there is something that I want to note, and it's this idea of corruption. And this idea of corruption, the Hebrew word here, it also carries a idea of ruin, of devastation, of self-devastation, of degradation, right? And this actually is, we experience it in everyday life. It's called the second law of thermodynamics. It's entropy. I just missed everybody. That's okay. So a year ago, I should have brought my phone up. I got an iPhone 11, tossed it to me. And when I got my iPhone 11, I upgraded from an 8, so the camera was incredible, right? And I made sure to get a phone on it. I made sure not to take it in the bathroom with me because the steam might get into it. I take really long showers. I enjoy showers. I was careful not to drop it, right? All these different things. But as time goes on, I become less infatuated with this. And this past week, I didn't have a case on it during the big storms. My wife called me. She's a little bit scared of the tornado warning. I run out of the gym, no case, falls out of my pocket, sits in the parking lot in a puddle of water for who knows how long. Driving home, I can't find my phone. Rats, I left it at the gym. I turn around, I pull into the parking lot. It's not in the gym, it's in the parking lot in a puddle on the ground. Eventually, I'm gonna throw this thing out, right? It's ruined, it's corrupted, it's just going towards more and more decay. You've experienced the same thing. Whether it's shoes, right? Your shoes that you got that you just didn't want to get any dirt on, and then eventually you didn't care and they just became a pile of mess. Maybe it was clothes. Maybe it was your first vehicle. I remember my Jeep, right? I didn't want a speck of dust on it. But then by the time I graduated, I didn't care if I got hailed on without a top on it, because it was just rusting out. But we do this with everything in our life, and we eventually just let it go. We eventually get rid of it because it has no value and purpose. All of that, it carries this idea of corruption and decay. Are you with me? But this gets a lot uglier when we start talking about life. And all of us, our bodies decay. I remember when we had to put my dog, Trouble, down, right? At first it was his legs that started going, then his sight and his ears, or his sight and his hearing. Eventually he started like gnawing on himself, got sores, growths, all these different things. We had to make a decision, like life is so corrupted for Trouble. Do we let him live in this horrific state, or do we put him down? Right? And the humane thing, at least agreed upon in our society, is, hey, don't let the dog live in this misery. It's actually better to put him down. Are you with me?
Yes.
Man, then it gets really intense when we think about our loved ones. If you've ever had a loved one on life support, and you've been involved with making the decision, you talk about grief. So this concept multiplied amongst humanity. So humanity has become so corrupt, so ruined, that God's faced with a decision. Do I let the corruption and the ruin and the devastation continue, or do I pull the plug? That's what's going on. So we see, man, this idea here, oftentimes people read the flood and they think vengeful, or they think wrathful, or they think angry and overwhelming and impractical. But really it's like, man, we face the same decisions in our life. But you multiply that, you imagine this grief. Are you with me? And so God's faced with this decision. Humanity is corrupt and evil and broken, and there's this cosmic rebellion going on that we won't get into, that we talked about a little bit last week. But we see, oh my gosh, what is this God going to do? How? And we're even faced with a couple questions, and this is what we're going to dive into this morning. Is how will God counter the curse and corruption of His creation? How will God counter the curse and corruption of His creation? Or put another way, how will He reverse the ruin? And we're going to figure it out in this chiasm. And it is amazing and it's beautiful, and in the end you're going to see, oh my gosh, it points to Jesus. Continue reading with me in verse 13. This is the beginning of this next part of this chiasm. So we'll highlight a different color. So God said to Noah, and notice in this whole story, Noah's not speaking. God is the hero. God is the main character. God is the protagonist. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all the earth, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth, meaning humanity, humankind, and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, or gopher wood, make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. It's really neat. This is just a cool thought. That word ark there is also translated basket for Moses. When Moses' mom puts him in a basket to save him.
Isn't that cool?
Just a cool comparison. Verse 15, This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark. Make lower, middle, and upper decks. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has the breath in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you. This is a little foreshadowing. And you will enter the earth, you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You're to keep every kind of food that is to be eaten and stored away as food for you and for them. Noah did everything that God commanded him. I used the wrong highlighter. So this is going to be another little nugget in our chiasm. We'll call this E. And what this is we could summarize it with this idea that God's resolution to destroy the earth by the flood. Just remember that. This is God's resolution to destroy the earth by the flood. And what's really crazy is previously, when it described Noah, it described him as righteous and blameless, or without a big sacrifice, without blemish. The thing that made Noah righteous wasn't his perfection. The thing that made Noah righteous was his willing to surrender and obey Yahweh. God gives him these crazy instructions that, man, if it's you or I, we're going to ask a million questions. A million clarifying questions of, okay, why an ark? Why now? Why me? Why? Right? We'd be like 2-year-olds. But Noah doesn't do that. We actually have 0 words of Noah. And I think this gives us a bit of an indication of why God viewed Noah as righteous. Is it wasn't about Noah's plan. It was about God's plan. Noah's righteousness wasn't found in himself. It was just found in his willingness to surrender and obey God. One of the things that theologians often argue or get in debates about is back up in verse 3 when God says, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mere mortals. Their days will be 120 years." At face value, we read that and we think, oh, God won't let people live more than 120 years. But that cannot be what this means, because there are plenty of people after Noah that will live longer than 120 years. So what theologians almost unanimously agree upon is God saying, hey, in 120 years, I'm going to bring a flood. Which means humanity had 120 years to turn from their ways, to turn back to God. So this isn't like a snap judgment. This isn't an emotional decision. This isn't just like, man, humanity's terrible, wipe them out, boom, start over. Like, he's giving them every chance in the world to be like, all right, I'm blowing it, we're blowing it, we got to stop doing it our way. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So, but in the middle of this, there's this foreshadowing of a covenant. And so we'll keep reading to chapter 7. This will be the last kind of portion of the chiasm that we'll get to today. We won't get to the center this week. We'll get to it next week. So I guess you got to come back one more week.
There you go.
Verse 1. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation." Why is he righteous? Not in himself, but simply because he surrendered and he obeyed God. Some nuggets for us to learn there. "Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, and male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature that I have made." We read that, right? And in our initial response is we have a little bit of issues with it. It's like, man, that seems wrathful, it seems vengeful. But if we tie it in with corruption and ruin, and even our love and mercy for our pets and our loved ones. I remember my grandpa, I remember my grandma, and that decision, and it was heartbreaking and grueling and heart-wrenching, right? And some of that's even happened in Bowling Green Church recently with some of us and our loved ones. And this is not a vengeful God. This is a God who's grieved, that's left with no other decision. Because there's so much corruption, there's so much decay, there's so much ruin. But look at what it says again of Noah. And Noah did all that God had commanded him. Obedience, he obeyed. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of unclean animals, of birds, and of all the creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, as God had commanded him. After 7 days, the floodwaters came to the earth. And so this is, we'll just call this part F of our chiasm. It's God's command, Noah's response, the entrance into the ark. Floods are going to come. There's going to be a pivot at the beginning of Genesis chapter 8. And then the chiasm is going to continue. Go to chapter 8. We'll pick it up in verse 15. And so the last part of the chiasm, right, in F was God's command, Noah's response, the entrance into the ark. This shouldn't say entrance, this should say exit or egress. So this is the reciprocal of F. So we're going to see almost everything play out identically. So God commands Noah, Noah's going to respond, and he's going to exit. The only difference is he just entered. Right? So I'm just showing you the parallels that we're entering next week. We're going to find the center of this chiasm next week. Then God said to Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife, your sons and your wives, bring out every kind of creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wives and his sons' wives. All the animals, all the creatures of the ground that moved along the ground, and all the birds, everything that moves on the land, came out of the ark, one kind after another. And so here, again, right, we see this idea of chiasm. But we still do not see how God's going to counter the curse or counter the corruption. And newsflash from last week, we know that Noah just repeats the sins of Adam and Eve, right? There's going to be fruit, there's going to be nakedness, sin's going to enter, and then what nation is going to be born from this? The Canaanites, right? Which, oh my gosh, their corruption, their wickedness, they sacrifice children to foreign deities, to lesser gods, to gods that aren't the God. And so we're starting to see this chiasm unfold, but we still don't know how God is going to reverse the room. The only nugget that we have is there's going to be a covenant. Are you with me?
Yeah.
What we're doing is different, but I'm trying to help you to see how to read our Old Testament. There isn't a right way to read the Old Testament, but there's many wrong ways. And so I'm just trying to give you some nuggets. We're going to see the reciprocal of E, right? And E, this was E, God's resolution to destroy the earth by a flood. So that was the first E. Here's going to be the reciprocal of E. Verse 20, then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil. So we're getting a nugget, right? He's saying, okay, I'm never going to do this again, but I still haven't fixed the issue, right? What is the issue? Every inclination of the human heart is evil. That means you, right? And we don't like thinking that. We like to think I'm inherently a good person. But the reality of the good news of Jesus and our Bibles is you are not good. You're actually incredibly selfish, arrogant, self-promoting, and full of wickedness. If you don't believe me, read the Bible. I promise you it jumps off the page if we do it humbly. Never again will I destroy all the living creatures, as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. So first God resolves to destroy. Now he's resolving never to destroy. Okay? So do we see the parallelism? We see this, right? All this is repeated. It's just repeated in reverse. This is so, all right, this is going to be amazing. I think it's amazing. Hopefully I explained it adequately. Genesis chapter 9. This is the thrust of this morning's lesson. We're going to read, I guess, all of this section. Yeah, 9, 1 through 15. This is going to be the reciprocal of D. Verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, and on all the birds in the sky, and every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the flesh in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be your food. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. We should think the Garden of Eden. He's giving him mastery over everything. Right? It's the Garden of Eden replaying itself. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood in it. So now it's not a tree, now it's things that have lifeblood in it. In your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting of every animal, and from every human being too I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. So if you shed the blood of a human, the blood of the human will be expected. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed, for the image of God. For in the image of God, God has made mankind. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase. Again, Garden of Eden, right? Adam, Eve, be fruitful, multiply. Verse 8. Then God said to Noah and to his sons, I now establish what? My covenant. So he gave us a little bit of a nugget. He gave us a foreshadowing. Something about a covenant is going to reverse the curse. Something about a covenant is going to counter the corruption. I now establish my covenant with you, Noah, and with all your descendants after you, with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark, every living creature on the earth. I establish my covenant with you. Never again, here's the covenant, never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of the flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. Amazing, right? So God says, I'm never going to do what I did ever again. But there's something that's still out there. Because he fixed every human heart. So, but we talked about God doing this because of mercy. Because of grace, right? The child, or the grandparent, the dog, right? So God, he hasn't fixed that. That's still going to happen. Corruption's going to happen. The cycle happens again and again and again. Fall, creation, redemption. Fall, creation, redemption. So how is God going to reverse the room? How is he going to counter the corruption? And God said, this is the sign of the covenant. Interesting, there's 3 signs connected to 3 different covenants in our Old Testament. We're going to look at one of them right now. The other one is circumcision in the flesh, and the Sabbath and rest about creation. Okay? So here's the third sign. This is the sign of the covenant I'm making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow, we're going to come back to that word. Did not mean to cross that. I've set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth, between Yahweh, between God and his creation. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all of creation, all of humanity. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, so it's like this overwhelming repetition. Rainbow, clouds, covenant. Rainbow, clouds, covenant. I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all creatures of every kind of earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant I've established between me and all life that is on earth. So we're not seeing the restoration completely here, but this points towards the restoration. And what's going on here is incredible. And we miss it in our language. So what are the three words that are pointing forward to the reversal of the rune? Or what are the three words that God is using to say, this is how I will counter the corruption? What are the three words? Covenant, rainbow, clouds. Covenant, rainbow, clouds. Covenant, rainbow, clouds. This is incredible. The Hebrew language, the word that it uses for rainbow, it's only used rainbow in our Bible 4 times, even though this word appears 80 times. So the Hebrew word for rainbow, the original language, it's only translated as rainbow 4 times in our NIV. Does anybody have the ESV? Can you just read verse 13?
I have set my bow.
Okay, say it louder.
I have set my bow.
Okay, stop. So the ESV translates it how every other verse in the NIV translates this word. Strictly bow. Are you with me? So what God's saying, I've set my bow where? In the clouds, and this is what? My covenant. A bow in the clouds, covenant. Interesting. The word bow, I said it appears 80 times in the Hebrew Bible. Right? 4 times the NIV translates it as rainbow. There's one time that it's really weird how they translate it. I think it's like as a musical instrument. But so that's 5. So the 75 other times that the word bow is translated, it's strictly translated as a weapon. Strictly. 75 out of 80 times, this Hebrew word that's used here that we're translating as rainbow here in the NIV, that we're reading the NIV right now, is translated as bow. And one of those times, over in Habakkuk, it says that God's the holder of the bow. So rather than thinking, so are you with me? Okay? Here's the chiasm, we're skipping all that. So God says, I will set my rainbow in the clouds and it will be the sign of the covenant, right? That's what we thought of when I read this idea. Rainbow, cloud, covenant. It's wild. Because theologians believe that this is what God was communicating. I have set my bow, which is, the rainbow is the symbolism, but it's symbolism for like a bow and arrow. Back in Genesis 1 and 2, right? I'm trying to help us just think like Hebrews, think like Israelites, right? For a Hebrew and an Israelite, what existed in the clouds? What was in the clouds? What was in the sky? Heaven, right? Genesis chapter 2, God separated the earth and the heavens, the rains above, the rains below, right? We're thinking, I'm trying to help us have a Hebrew worldview. Above is heaven, below is earth. God says, I have set my bow in the heavens. And that bow, where does it point? It points to the heavens. Are you with me? It's not pointing at humanity. God says, okay, the only way I'm going to fix every inclination of the human heart is that I'm going to set my judgment on the heavens. I can't set my judgment on humanity because humanity can't save themselves. I must set my judgment on the heavens. Daniel chapter 7, who is the cloud rider in the heavens? Jesus. AKA God. Hopefully you're following me. Go to Isaiah chapter 53. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4. So God's setting his bow aimed to the heavens, right? Where Yahweh resides. where Jesus lives, right? Foreshadowing of Jesus. Isaiah 53, verse 4. Surely he took what? Our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we consider him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that has brought us peace was on him. By his wounds we have been healed. The cloud, the covenant of the cloud, it literally points to Jesus. God says, how am I going to counter the corruption of creation? I will die for my creation. The judgment, the reversal, it will all fall on me. This points to Jesus. Because even the flood, right? The flood's not going to fix everything. It's going to perpetuate itself. It gets ugly again and again and again. And it gets ugly with God's people. It's ugly today, right? And it's wild because we think we're going to fix humanity with new legislation.
Yes.
We think we're going to fix humanity with new technology, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody thinks we're any closer to fixing humanity today than we were 50 years ago, right? And I'm not just talking about the United States of America. I'm talking worldwide.
Yeah.
We talked about the sex slave trade industry, human trafficking industry is booming nationally. The only way that the human heart can be fixed is if God dies for humanity.
Yeah.
God says, I'm not going to cast my judgment on humanity. I'm going to cast it on myself. The wrath, the judgment, the pulling the plug, I'm going to do it on myself. And I'm going to die for my humanity. And look at what Peter writes about this whole idea in 1 Peter chapter 3. That's what he says. Speaking of Jesus, he says, he himself, meaning Jesus, bore our sins, right? Because we are not good people. We're depraved, we're ugly, we're selfish, we're evil, we're wicked. He bore our sins in his body on the cross. Why? So that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds, the bow and arrow, the wound, by his wounds you have been healed. The whole flood story is pointing forward to the crucifixion of Jesus, where Jesus bore your sins and bore my sins. Not so that we can perpetuate the cycle of corruption, but so we can stop it. Learning to die to sin and live for righteousness. And so I circle back to the question. Have people seen Jesus through your life this summer? Because it's twofold. Sin is regressing, right? We're never going to be perfect. But righteousness is increasing. And the interesting thing, it's not about perfection. It's not. We'll never arrive at perfection. But it is about submission. Doing what Jesus wants us to do. Inspired by the young men. They had these courageous conversations, letting the light of God and one another into each other's lives. Getting help with the things that we need to help with. But what about you? Are you really surrendering and submitting to God's plan in your life? What does your prayer life look like? When we're hanging out with one another, are we more inclined to watch baseball, play basketball, play video games, or are we eager to share Jesus with one another? We can still do those things while still sharing Jesus. Right? Having authentic, real conversations. Praying with one another. Sharing our faith together. We went on a date yesterday with Asia and Dalton and got to share our faith with our waiter, or our waitress. She was a woman. Our waitress. And during the conversations, we had conversations about how are you guys glorifying God? How are we glorifying God? And it was special and it was authentic. And then we came back and like, man, that was awesome. Living for righteousness is not just not sinning. Man, how are you living for Yahweh? Because the reality is Jesus died on the cross to create a new humanity that isn't dominated by corruption, that isn't defined by room, but it's defined by righteousness. In the Bowling Green Church, we should be a glimmer of that community. We should be a fraction of that humanity. It starts with individuals, but it overflows into a community. And what's so special about God, what's so special about Jesus, is this idea of might. He doesn't force any of us to do it. He doesn't. And why? Because that's what love is. Love always gives a choice. Here's the reality. God loves you so much that he took your place in the flood. That he took your place on the cross. All the wickedness that you've done, that you've thought, that you've partaken in. He said, I'll bear that. Why? So that they might live for God. May that might turn into reality for the Bowling Green Church. I'll pray and then we'll be dismissed.
We, the Bowling Green Church, are a diverse family devoted to the Bible on a mission to love God, love people, and see this world changed for Jesus. If that's something you're interested in joining and becoming a part of, please leave a comment below or connect with us on our website or on Facebook. Our website is thebowlinggreen.church. We'd love to connect with you and passionately pursue Jesus together. Thank you so much for worshiping with us, and we look forward to meeting you.